Hello everyone and welcome back to the channel. My name is Adi and today we have a really special team report from the Oceania International Championships and I am joined by your Oceania International Champion, Gavin Michaels. How are you doing?
I'm holding up all right. Uh, yeah, I'm here now. Yeah, good to be on here.
Yeah, it's great to have you. I know, of course, you were on the channel after San Diego Regionals showing off your Palafin team, and so of course we have to have you back on with the better, more refined Palafin team that you've come up with, and of course won your second national championship with. I guess I've been talking
Yeah,
about you, but do you want to introduce yourself first?
yeah, sure. And also, what's great about that is that you get to save on your thumbnail budget. You just reuse the old one.
True, I could do that.
Yeah, I'm Gavin Michaels. I've been playing this game for 12 years now. Yeah, 12 years now. Um, I've won Nats in 2013, so watch out for me in years ending with three. And won three regionals, with the most recent of them being in Vancouver.
Um, yeah, and like you mentioned, 2013 national champion, now 2023 Oceania international champion. So that is really really cool to see. And yeah, so like you mentioned this again last video. You talked about how you built out your Palafin team. Tell me about why you chose to continue building around Palafin going into Series 2 when everyone kind of wrote it off.
Yeah, I think that for me, like, I just felt like Palafin is the archetype that, out of everything, made the most intuitive sense to me. And, like, I felt like I was, like, really enjoying Palafin, and I felt like I was the best Palafin player out there. So it's like, I don't really care what's actually good. I don't care if Palafin is terrible or something. It's not, but like I don't care if it is. If I'm the best player at an archetype, and I really thought at Ninto Sassy I was the best rain player, then I should just be using that and trying to make it work as much as possible. I think that like Palafin teams like needed to like really like change their identity, but what you got was something really cool, and like I think that like it was a very rewarding archetype to build.
Yeah, absolutely, and it's cool to see how you've innovated on it. I know I've been following along with your progress. You had the Iron Jugulus on the team for a while. I guess I don't know. I keep talking about what you're doing. Tell
Yeah.
me about your team building
Oh,
process.
yeah. So the first things first is that if you ever tried to use rain in this format, you're like, man, Iron Bundle's annoying. How do I beat Iron Bundle? So the three Mon core, right, that like stayed over is Pelipper, Palafin, and Amoonguss from the San Diego team, but the sets are totally different, right? We'll get into why those sets are different later. What I want to start off with actually is I think really the first mon to talk about with Rain is Iron Hands. Because I think that everyone's first reaction to seeing Series 2 was taking the Palafin teams that were like doing well in San Diego and going, oh my god, what if I replaced the King Gambit with an Iron Hands? Huh? And like I think everyone had that thought. There's a really natural synergy, right? Where Iron Hands beats the crap out of Iron Bundle. And the Volt Switch synergy with Palafin is super nice, where you can like switch out the Palafin into something, slow Volt Switch, bring the Palafin back in. Congratulations, you have the God Pokemon. Um, that, the high special defense stat, the Fake Out, and the Terra Grass like being like one of Iron Hand's best Terra options, like or at least like top two, meant it was just like a really natural fit there. I think where a lot of people really struggle and why people like ran into a dead end with building Pelipper teams is that they were trying to really make Goldengo work on it. So, like obviously, like one of the big features of a lot of the Rain teams that we saw prior was like using the synergy between like Palafin and Goldengo, where it's like you're either throwing like the immediate damage with Palafin, or you're creating space with Goldengo and the Nasty Plot. However, with this format, the Goldengo kind of just got ran over, where like you you can argue like, oh, well, it's fine into Iron Bundle, it has no SPDF. Yeah, but the Hydro Bomb still hurts. You're making it hurt more because you set up Rain. You're still like getting kind of ran over a bit, and it's just kind of awkward to pilot into a lot of stuff, and it ends up making you take a lot of resources, at least in my opinion. Where I found a lot of success early on was with Dragon Fang Excalibur, which was on like one of the initial like versions of the team, and then once I started using it, I like never gave up on that. So I was trying Life Orb Excalibur for a while, with the idea being like, okay, this is like a sick mod. You can like KO a Moongus, which can be annoying. You can one-shot Iron Bundle, which is annoying. But then I asked GSock Lee on Twitter, because I figured he's the Excalibur guy. I'm sure he has Excalibur opinions. And he pointed out the sickest calc to me, which is that if you run max attack Adamant Excalibur, you just barely always one-hit KO Iron Bundle with Glaive Rush. And what I mean just barely is, if they run 4 points in defense, suddenly it's a roll. My Glaive Rush one-shot every Iron Bundle I played against. Because while there are a few bulky ones, most of them are heavily invested in SPDF if they are bulky. And so it's just like, I was able to like abuse this meta trend, the fact that like no one else was using Excalibur, or like Dragon Fang Excalibur. Hell, the other Excalibur in Day 2 didn't even have a dragon move. So like I was able to use that to my advantage and like have a staple of my team that just kind of like beat the crap out of Iron Bundle consistently, which let the other pieces really do their job. And yeah. And then I could talk a bit about like the other sets before getting into the Dragon Knight slot, if that's all good.
Yeah, go for it.
So pretty early on, I shifted away from the Choice Band set, which I was super fond of, to Mystic Water with Terra Water Palafin. The reason for that is I felt that like, the additional flexibility was kind of necessary. In Series 1, Choice Band Palafin was so strong and had no counters that like you could just punch everything to death and it would work. Here, there's actually Pokemon with stats now, which is really messed up. So like, I don't know, like you don't want to be locked into Jet Punch against like an Iron Bundle. And also, I think one thing that like we saw from the teams that did super well prior to this was that there was a lot of protects. Because protects make it so that like your opponent doesn't have safe lines. They can't safely double up into anything, and you're just denying them options. So this Palafin ended up being like what I think a lot of people like kind of came to as like the way to run like Grain Palafin. And so like what some people might notice is that you're not running Flip Turn on it, which seems like inherently like a really obvious move, right? Palafin like switching turn 1 a lot, so you want to Flip Turn out. But a lot of times it's better to just raw switch it out anyways. The reason for that is, yeah, you do get like a bit of damage with the Flip Turn, but once Palafin is in, you generally want it to stay in because it's so powerful versus everything. That's not saying you never switch it, but like it means that you're only getting clicking Flip Turn once per game, probably. Mm-hmm. And even then, if your opponent has like faster Pokemon that are threatening it, you don't want your Palafin to take all that chip damage before it's able to actually be a useful Pokemon. That's just not a good trade.
So on that note, I know that you had your team pretty much ready way before Orlando Regionals, which was the first big event of the format, and then Gothitelle was just all over Top Cut at that event, and that seems like one of the main reasons that Flip Turn would be really useful is escaping that trap. Did the results at Orlando impact your decisions at all?
No, I mean I was definitely scared of it because I was looking at it and I was like, "Ah, man, Perish is really hard." But then I realized you just Terra the baby Palafin and you go in, and you just click Wave Crash 20 times and it works. So like I had ran into a lot of Perish on ladder and I realized like I was able to consistently beat it by just smacking it and then like winning like the 2v3 endgame that I would get myself into. Like you just have enough strong neutral damage from the beginning with Palafin, which like I think is like hard to remember sometimes. That just like, oh right, like Palafin is still a real Pokemon when it's baby, and like that's something I really use to my advantage, both in testing and throughout the tournament, because you can get some fun calcs like, you know that when Reina is up, baby Palafin can one-shot Goldengo. So basically, like I think it was like versus Aurelian. They tried to set up a nasty plot on me, But turn one, I just Terra, Water, Baby Palafin, wave crashed it, went switched into Pelipper, and then no threat. Because like people get stuck in this mindset of that like, oh, the Palafin is switching out. Because 90% of the time the Palafin is switching out, but there's a lot of times where you just really, really abuse that. And then also speaking of, that's why Terra Water is so important, to get that extra juice on calcs. Like sometimes it can feel, oh, it's unnecessary, Palafin's so strong already, but you give yourself that extra bit of space and it lets you create some really cool calcs at the cost of like not having a defensive Terra and like having to actually like deal with the Mungus.
Yeah, that makes sense.
That's also a bit into the EV spread a bit. I'm a big believer that fat Palafin should be Terra Water and fast Palafin should be Terra Grass. The reason for that is, if you're Terra Grassing, you just kind of want to really abuse the fact that like the Amoonguss is stupid now. The worst thing is when you Terra Grass and you're slower than the goddamn Goldengo next to it, and you eat shit from the Make It Rain anyways. Like, wow, you really did so much. No, you need to be faster and just like obliterate that thing before it moves. And it's like, I feel like if you're running bulk, which I really personally appreciated, I don't think you're getting that mileage you need out of Terra Grass. And then one other thing that was super useful about this Palafin set was adding on Haze. Haze Palafin plus an Iron Hands plus an Amoonguss is probably like the best like Dondozo matchup you can really ask for. Like, I think I played something like 4 or 5 rounds against Dondozo, and I mean, I didn't lose to them. I think I dropped like maybe like 2 games in total against them. Like, the combination of Haze and healing and just like being able to resist its attacks just does so much. And like, there's a couple other times where Haze is relevant, but if I'm being real, yeah, Haze is really for Dondozo.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes sense.
I'm talking a lot about the Palafin because it's a Palafin theme.
Right.
I think Palafin and Pelipper actually had 100% bring rates for me this tournament. That's like, you don't always have to bring them, but they're really good. I could be wrong. Maybe I'm forgetting the time where I didn't bring one of them, but I'm pretty sure they were like 100%. Actually, I don't think I brought Pelipper round 1. I think that was it. Anyways, like, so then next up I'm going to talk about the Pelipper a bit. So this might be different from what people expected in Series 1 and what we saw. So Series 1, the Pelipper was all about the damp rock. Maximize the turns of rain. Which the reason for that was pretty simple. Like, we were using teams that were really built around getting max mileage out of those rain turns, right? Like, we were spamming Hurricane and Thunder, and also Palafin was able to solo carry a lot more. Like, you're able to get into spots where, like, you get rain up, and then, like, you sack the Pelipper, and Palafin can just, like, pretty cleanly win the 3v4. Or your Tauros Aqua Breed in your guys' case, I suppose.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, we were on the aggro Pelipper way before you were. We were running Life Orb on it, so we were not about.
Wait, did you guys?
Life.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Ew. Anyways, what was nice about Damprock was just like you could sack the Pelipper, which you would do by just switching the Palafin out into it, and then like you can win the 3v4 pretty reliably. However, like that's not as like used right now because like Palafin has a lot more trouble winning the 3v4. You can't just like sack and then click buttons to win the game. So that meant that Pelipper had to become more of an actual Pokemon. Pelipper is able to get a lot more done with the Focus Sash set. So I got this set from Lisa Miss Salami on Twitter, where running like max special attack and max speed allowed for a couple of cool things. Number 1, you outrun Iron Bundle in Tailwind. Number 2, you one-shot Iron Bundle. So there's a lot of circumstances now where it lets you flip that matchup in on its head. And that's really important. So it's like you can take a freeze dry, and then if it's not Focus Sash, right? Which I don't think many of the Iron Bundles that did well were. Maybe I'm wrong on that, but like I feel like there was a big trend towards Booster Energy and Covert Club.
Mm-hmm.
Then you could just one-shot them. Or it's like, I think there's like an 81.3 blah, 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 whatever you're killing after they hit themselves in confusion anyways. Like chance to kill. Or you can Terra Flying it, and then you can one-shot a Moongus. And it's like, you're just creating a lot of pressure and a lot of space with this more offensive set. One other thing to talk about, too, is Protect. I think Protect and Sash is such an annoying mind game. Because if you want to remove the Pelipper, you're going to have to double into it. But also, I can Protect, and then your double does nothing into it. So you're just creating a constant headache for your opponent for having to like go for reads and stuff. Yes, you don't have wide guard, which means that stuff like Goldengo is more annoying. That side spam can be more annoying. We'll get to side spam matchup later. But the additional flexibility of Protect on it just made it feel like you can like, I don't know, kind of box, for lack of a better word. Like you have like better neutral. And like that was like a really important tool for everything, even though it's not like Protect is a matchup winner. It's just like increasing the overall strength of the team, which I thought was very important.
Mm-hmm.
Let's see here. Next, like important Pokemon to go over is Amoonguss. Amoonguss is crazy. So I was on the Leaf Storm and Jetpack lifestyle in Series 1, which was super aggro and didn't really work, but it was really fun. Anyways, Citrus Berry Terra Steel Amoonguss absolutely works. I think that Terra Steel is the best Terra type on Amoonguss in Ring. Yes, you do have the fire weakness. No, you don't really care about it. You also just like are a phenomenal type, clicking Spore, clicking Pollen Puff, and you get a ton of healing. What's really nice about Amoonguss is you were able to switch it out and switch it out so many times that in a lot of my games, I felt like I was recovering a full Amoonguss's worth of HP from Regenerator, but just switching it out and switching it back in. And then like you're clicking Pollen Puff, you're clicking Protect, you're just able to be really annoying with it. And like I've always loved playing with Amoonguss. Like Amoonguss was on the first team I ever built back in 2011. And now that Terras aren't a thing, this team really felt like it was able to make Amoonguss really, really, really pop off. And like even if they Terra Grass or something, you can abuse that. Click the flying moves into it. Click the bug move into it. Pollen Puff's a good attack. And like it's hard to say specifically like, oh, this is the times where Amoonguss is good into like XYZ situation. It's just that it's constantly creating space. And like you're able to create the space that lets the Palafin like come in and do its job. And just like it works and synergizes very well into Abstract. Also, crazy synergy with Wave Crash.
Yeah, it's the best mod in the format, right? I've been saying it from the beginning.
Mm-hmm. Oh yeah, it's the best mod in every format. It was that like I was the only one in top cut with it too, which is crazy.
Mm-hmm.
Like, because that guy's good. There's a reason that you're running Terra Grass on everything, because this guy's so annoying. Like, fun Amoonguss fact. So in finals, like I played Alberto Lara. I played a lot of practice games against Alberto Lara, all of which I brought Amoonguss and was able to kind of like really run him over with it. So I was able to kind of figure that like in like finals, he was going to lead to counter Amoonguss. So I just didn't bring it. But what makes Amoonguss so annoying is that there's a constant threat of it, and that even if like people respect Amoonguss, it still makes Amoonguss such a powerful Pokemon. You just need to be able to say like, okay, if you're committing your Terra, if you're committing all of this, yeah, I can get around the Amoonguss, but I'm good enough that like I can take advantage of that. You just have to like be able to take advantage of all the ways that people are trying to counter Amoonguss, and just like let it create space even when it's not there.
Mm-hmm.
Now, last one I want to get to is Dragonite. So I had these 5 locked in for like 2 weeks into Series 2. Like these first 5 were pretty locked in. Prior to that, though, I was rocking the Iron Jugulus. I was using Terra Steel with Snarl, Hurricane, Tailwind, Protect, which was a fun set that was like good into Size Spam and good into Goldengo. And it's just like, it was pretty functional and fun. The main reason I switched actually was, despite one of them being a Dark type and one of them not, I actually thought Dragonite was better into Size Spam. Now the reason for that is, I don't know if you've seen a Size Spam team recently, But those guys have a King Gambit on it. And if you try to click Snarl into a King Gambit, you look so dumb. Like, you look so stupid.
Mm-hmm.
And, like, before it, like, kills you, then you don't look like anything. But, like, prior to that. So, what Dragonite is able to do is just consistently use Ice Spinner to get rid of Psychic Terrain while just being a good mon. Yeah, it's a total Terra Hog, but so is Iron Jugulus, with Terra Steel being needed for it to like create space. Dragonite is threatening actual kills with Terra Blast, and against Amoonguss, like you're obliterating that thing, and they can't spore you. So, I think a lot of people were trying like Goldengo on here or stuff to like have a spread move to counter redirection. I felt that Dragonite, despite not having a spread move, was the best anti-redirection mon in the format, just because it beats all the redirectioners.
Mm-hmm.
Besides Massel. We don't talk about Massel.
Yeah. I do miss the Jugulus. It was a really cool mod. Obviously, this past weekend, Wolf did really well with it at and Marcus did really well with it at Bochum and Knoxville. So I'm glad it got to see its time in the sun, but because it is my personal favorite Paradox Pokemon. But yeah, Dragonite. It is funny that Dragonite is the better answer into Psy Spam, which of course, if you're trying to jet punch things, you can't really do that as effectively if the terrain is up. And we got to see you on stream show exactly how to deal with the psychic terrain, I think, and how annoying the Dragonite can be.
Yeah, no, you spin to win. I know like some people are like, oh, well, if they preserve the Indeedee, then like, oh, they can maintain the psychic terrain, but like, it's really hard to maintain the Indeedee if you're putting on that consistent pressure. Like, if you force out the Indeedee, get rid of psychic terrain, Palafin wins.
Yeah. And then you have a Lumberry on there. Why did you choose that item?
Sure. So partially for like dealing with like Amoonguss, but also really for dealing with Brute Bonnets in Triggering, which again, really common on the side spam type of teams. I also went with it because I felt like it made my matchup into Arcanine a bit more consistent. Funny enough, like you'd think like, oh, Rain Team can blast through Arcanine. It's not actually quite that simple because we're talking about safety goggles, letting it ignore Amoonguss. It can like outspeed and Will-O-Wisp the Iron Hands and the Palafin, and it can also just Terra away to not care about it. Like Terra Water safety goggles was a real set on it. So having the conjunction of Baxcalibur and Dragonite to just like not get burned by it meant not only did I have like Arcanine answers, but I had different Arcanine answers that played really differently, which made it so that my opponent couldn't just like stack like a counter for just one of Baxcalibur or Dragonite. They have to deal with both. And despite their shared typing, it's actually pretty difficult to beat both Baxcalibur and Dragonite at the same time. I think a good, especially like if I'm able to commit the Terra to either of them away from their Dragon typing. Yeah, and then I also feel like Lum is just one of those generally consistent items where like it just makes it so that things kind of work and you don't have to worry about like random sleep just like ruining your day or something, which like it's probably not necessary, but like I fought a lot of battles in the Smeargle Wars. I fought a lot of games where Amoonguss could still spore other Amoonguss, so you ran Chesto, Berry, Amoonguss to take a spore and then spore their Amoonguss. That wasn't enough, so you had to run fast Chesto Amoonguss to spore their Amoonguss, which woke up, and spore your Amoonguss, which woke up, and then you could spore their Amoonguss the next turn.
Yeah, it's really a wonder that VGC survived those years.
Oh, also, if you switched out, your sleep counter reset.
Yeah. Oh god, I played singles a little bit in Gen 5, and man, the sleep mechanics were not okay at all. I'm glad they changed that back. Yeah, VGC. Anyways, that's a story for a different day. But yeah, that's a really solid overview of the individual Pokemon. Was there anything else you wanted to cover about the Pokemon and how they're trained?
Yeah, sure. So you might notice a couple of weird EV spreads. So what the Baxcalibur does is that lives Moonblast from Fluttermane. So without committing your Terra, you can beat Flutter Maze by just icicle crashing and ice sharding it. And if they're booster energy special attack, then you do have to Terra it to beat it. But like, okay, that's cheating. Who cares? Um, Additionally, it also has only a 6% roll to die to Terra Steel Make It Rain from Goldango, I believe. I think that's right. Yeah, I think that's what that comp does. Maybe I'm wrong on that. Maybe it's just like a non-Terra Steel Make It Rain. Regardless, it didn't come up too much. The Fluttermane one was much more relevant.
That makes sense.
Additionally, like you'll notice a little bit of speed on everything. That's just to get in the Outrun Iron Bundle in Tailwind range. I think that like at one point in my team building process, I could like count from 115 to 118 with my Baxcalibur through Pelipper. One thing that like I was actually really testing in team building was a 20 speed IV Palafin, I think. Maybe it was 25. But to make it 1 point slower than Pelipper. So that enabled lines where if it was Pelipper or Palafin on the board, you could Hurricane a Moongus and then Wave Crash the other target to get rid of it, which I thought was pretty strong. I ultimately ended up deciding against it because I ended up preferring lines where Palafin could haze before Pelipper moves, so you could haze Dondozo and then get a really strong Hurricane off onto it. But I think both are like pretty worthwhile to look into.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense, and it's cool that you get to, we talk about Open Team Sheet and how everything's revealed that speed benchmarks are not, and so it's cool that you get to see all the speed stats essentially and see where all of your Pokemon line up into your opponent.
Oh yeah,
especially with an ability like Drizzle that shows like whether Arcanines are fast or slow and stuff like that.
Yeah, against Yuki Zanovich, I played against him day one, and I was able to tell like where everything sat just from one interaction with I think it was like my Pelipper. Like I saw that my Pelipper was faster than the Goldengo, and I knew every speed tier because the Goldengo that Yuki had I think was like faster than his Glamora or something like that. And then like I can just place everything and I know all of the speed interactions right at the top of my head. Whereas like with Palafin, you don't know what speed investment it has. It could be super fast. So it's like that's not something you necessarily know. And with Pelipper, like people weren't at the time very used to like Pelipper speed calcs because it was a pretty rare Pokemon. And also like Dragon and Baxcalibur are good examples of Pokemon that can do any speed from like 0 to max.
Right, absolutely. And I think especially with Palafin, I remember in our San Diego team report when you were talking about your top cut set versus James Evans. I think one of the pivotal turns was that you didn't know whether the Palafin was faster or slower than the Rotom, I think, and so speed tiers and knowing whether to Wave Crash or Jet Punch seems like it's a really, really a big deal for this team.
Oh yeah, absolutely. Like that is something to be said about the weakness of it. Like going back to that set against Yuki, game one I lost because I Terra'd I Terra'd my Palafin in range, Jet Punched the Goldengo, and it lived. Now that's because it was max HP. If I knew that, I could have just Wave Crashed it and it would have died anyways. But it was specs. I thought, oh, it was probably fast. And like the thing is like you can kind of pick one and like one thing that's cool about Palafin is that like you're just assuming that like Goldengos will either be slower than you or frail enough to die to Jet Punch. You can make a Goldengo that doesn't, but also people weren't doing that. So it's like I was aware that this is a way that people could take advantage of it, and also just be like, I don't care. I can like spend a game to like figure out which one it is if I get the 50-50 wrong. Or I can scout ahead of time to try to figure out what the hell your spread is. And then if I know that, then I can make use of my Palafin is always beating the Goldengo.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And so I guess on that note, do you want to talk about how to actually pilot the team and what your common game plans were?
All right. Step 1, lead Palafin.
All right, that's the easy part. That's the part I've seen on ladder a lot. I've been losing a lot on ladder, so everyone needs to figure out step 2.
Yeah, now that you've mastered that part, I have led every single one of these Pokemon into next to Palafin at some point for some reason. Funny enough, I think that Iron Hands was actually my rarest lead with Palafin, but I think it's the one that people emulate the most because the switching out and full switching back in combo is so cool. Um, I think that it's just like I lead Pelipper if I want to be super aggressive with it. Like I want to just be trying to like create space and like force stuff out and like the type of situations where I can use Pelipper to break down the mons that to like force out the Pelipper encounters, right? Because generally like teams are only going to have a couple of ways that are good into the water types. Force those out and then create space for Palafin to win later. So that was a common game plan, and that's what I used to win against Chuck Cross. Palafin Baxcalibur was one of my very common leads because what you could do is you could switch out Palafin and then commit your Terra onto Baxcalibur and deal with a lot of double ups. This was super useful, especially into bundle, like a combination of bundle, hands, Fluttermane type teams, or like Arcanine. You can throw those on there too. Or it's like you can pretty safely Terra Poison, get off a big Icicle Crash or Glaive Rush, and it's just like you're creating space for the Palafin to switch out, and they can't punish it. I would lead Palafin Dragonite into Side Spam, where there the game plan is Ice Spinner away the terrain, maybe Wave Crash the Indeedee to try to kill it faster. That was pretty common to like try to. It was a roll into most Indeedees that Ice Spinner Terra Wave Crash would kill it, but sometimes really worth going for that roll. Or you could switch out the Palafin. Again, it's about like creating the space for it because getting rid of the Dragonite is something that they need to address. Because without that, they're never getting up Psychic Terrain and they're never winning the game. Or I would lead a Moongus if I noticed that their team had an Amoonguss problem, frankly, right? Amoonguss was a go-to, especially into Iron Moth, Fluttermane type of teams, because I could commit my Terra Steel to always beat like the Acid Spray Shadow Ball double up, which like if you're an Iron Moth Fluttermane player, I just assume that that's like your I don't know, like you're addicted to that. That's like your catnip or something. So it's just like I'm always like hyper aware of that and trying to counter that. And then again with the Iron Hands, like you can do it against like more defensive teams that really can't deal with Palafin, but like I would say that the other four are generally like stronger leads. In back, Iron Hands is very good. Amoonguss is very good, and Pelipper is very good. And like you should really be trying to maximize how often you're bringing Palafin and Pelipper with this. I would say that it was generally very rare for me to bring both dragons to a game, although it did sometimes happen versus a couple of specific size spam teams. And also, if I brought a dragon, most of the time they were led. So I would go Palafin, like plus a dragon or something, and then Pelipper and back, and then one of Hands or Amoonguss was a pretty common approach. Or I could go something like Palafin, and then one of like Palafin, Pelipper, Hands, Amoonguss in like any configuration there was like pretty solid as well. Yeah, so I definitely say like the top four, like the main four.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's hopefully now randoms on ladder are going to be a little better at using the team because I know like a week after your win, this was all over ladder and then it really fell off. And now I mean, we just had Nick on the channel, and now his Little Good Torkoal team is all over ladder. It's the newest weather team everyone's trying to emulate. So it is kind of funny to see that. But yeah, I hope people revisit this because it is obviously really, really powerful. But it's just like I don't know. Like I think we were talking about this at some point. It's just a really hard team to play, and you just have so much practice with it, and you've played with it so much that you have that experience that you know exactly what you have to do. But I think a lot of times it is hard to pick up and people are like, oh, this team's going to be easy. They try it and then they don't really succeed. So this is a really good overview to help people out with that.
I think one thing that people don't realize with this team is the pacing of it. My games would average 13 to 14 turns. Like, this is a team you have to be very patient and methodical with. I think that if you're playing every turn well, then you can create situations that are very safe and very favored for you. And like I found that when I was practicing with this team, pretty much every game I lost, there was something I could have done better to improve, and I took a note of that and would just incorporate that into my play later. It's like just the timing of a protect, like an idea to like make sure that I was like making sure that like, oh, I brought an Iron Hands to deal with this Pokemon, so like I can't just like have it sit in back here because it'll be dead weight later. And it's just like constant like refinement of that play, and just playing like very like slowly and methodically. One thing you'll notice about like the games where I was on stream, those games took a while. Those were like pretty long 2-0s because that's just kind of what you need to do to build up an overwhelming advantage and not rush.
Mm-hmm. And those stream games were clinical. They were just, I mean, I know you played super super well. It was just, I remember just being really really impressed watching them. But on top of that, uh, it felt like you were in your opponent's head almost, where you made maybe like one read per game, and you just always got it right. And that was just so.
Mm-hmm.
It felt like you know, again, you'd played the team, played a million games with the team, and knew what your opponent was going to do before they did it.
Yeah, it's like having that sense of that, and also like I think one thing I was really good with this team was knowing what I could fuck up and still get away with it. So like, I think against Yuya in top four, there was a turn where I hard read the Arcanine switching, but and while I think that won me the game there, I was also thinking to myself, I think if I get burned, that's okay. And it's like I know these situations so much better than my opponent that I have a better idea of what's a death sentence and what's not. And like that leads to some kind of crazy stuff. Like against Taran, for example, in round 5, this is a matchup I thought was terrible, and that I would have to hard call everything to get correct. This is because Taran was using a rain team, but everything was faster than mine, and also it had yeah, it had a lot of stuff that was annoying, like Roaring Moon that Palafin can't really do that much to, and is threatening to kill the Amoonguss, right? Or like I don't know.
You say
Like,
that, but if you look up Palafin on the Discord gift search, one of the top results is Roaring Mid. Sorry, yeah, I think you search Roaring Moon. One of the two is Roaring Mid, and you're just doing a million damage to Alberto's Roaring Moon. So
that's true, yeah. um, but yeah, this is a matchup that I felt like I had to play like pretty aggressively to get right. Turn 1, he sends out, I think it was Goldengo and Brute Bonnet, and I send out Palafin Pelipper, which is like, that's my aggressive, like, I'm getting stuff right here, let's go. And I decide, you know what? He is going to call that I'm going to throw the water attacks into the Goldengo, because that's what I did last game. He's going to call like a protect wave crash onto the Goldengo spot. So I'm going to double into that Brute Bonnet with a Hurricane and Terra Water Wave Crash. And I click the button, and he Sucker Punch and Shadow Balls the Pelipper, and it dies. And I do like 20 damage to the Brute Bonnet as it's Baby Palafin in there. And I need to 3v4. But like, I'm able to. Like, I still barely have enough wiggle room that even though I totally whiffed the read, I could still like make a comeback happen, just like very methodically, and like, yeah, it's just like barely enough resources. Like I think that's something that like you get with familiarity with the team is like you can figure out exactly what you can get away with and what you can't. So
mm-hmm.
it's like, I don't know, you can recognize the positions where you can actually be like, no, 2v4 wins here. What do you mean?
I believe it. And so I guess that's a great segue into the tournament itself. And so, do you want to talk to me about your tournament run and your experience in Australia?
Yeah, sure. So my tournament run started in a funny way, which was I dropped a game round 1 because my opponent had Terra Psychic Tyranitar, and turn 1 of game 2, hard red Palafin switching out into a Moongus immediately terrored the Tyranitar and terror blasted it to one-shot my Amogus. And now, when you're at round 1 and you're losing to the Terra Steel Braviary game, you think the tournament might not be going as great as you initially hoped. But I was able to like kind of turn it around and like win the first round. I got the win into Taran, where it was like a bad matchup where I kind of had a like miraculous comeback. That was when I suddenly felt like, oh, I can do this. I mean, it's also really easy to think, oh, I can do this when you're 5-0. So like, not like, but like that's like a third of the way into like these actual long tournaments. So it still like means something.
Mm-hmm.
And then from there, I was able to just like get like really solid and like consistent wins into matchups I didn't think were that great. And then a couple of matchups are pulled where I was like, okay, yeah, these are amazing. Mainly all the Dondozo. Thank you to every Dondozo player. I really appreciate you. But I knew going in that a lot of like Mousehold Goldengo type teams were annoying for my team. The reason for that is it creates a lot of space for like a nasty plot to just like run me over, and it makes I can't easily remove the Mousehold. So then I need to spend time switching out the Palafin, getting it back in just to kill the Mousehold. And by that time happens, the Goldengo's already clicked Make It Rain 10 times, is at -6 and still doing 30%. And it's just like, it felt very hard in practice, but in tournament, I found that my opponents weren't actually going for the Mousehold Goldengo stuff into me. They would like bring them like disjointed with each other, or I think against like Masayoshi Kuro, he didn't bring the Goldengo at all versus me, which I thought was like the scary part of that like Villion support team.
Mm-hmm.
And so I think that like I was able to get a lot of value out of people's lack of familiarity with that matchup. Now, in the tournament, I only lost to one person. I got 4-0'd by Thomas Gravia. I don't know how you pronounce his last name. I got 4-0'd by Hari. So let's talk about that. I knew going in that the Mouse 8 matchup was kind of min. It was that if I got everything right, I could like pretty like all right beat the Mousehold Annihilate. When I play Hari day 1, I don't go for that game plan game 1, and I get totally rolled. And it looked like I've never played that matchup before in my life. In game 2, I miss a Hydro Pump. And I'm like, okay, that happens, whatever. Game 2, when I played him day 2, it got a lot harder. Because he wasn't leading Mousehold Annihilate anymore. He was leading Mousehold Roaring Moon. Which, like, I have Pokemon that are good into Roaring Moon, but because my game plan into Mouse Ape was so fixed and linear, and I didn't build in multiple options, he was able to just hard counter that. And that would make me have to hard call if he was going like Mousehold Roaring Moon or not. And even if I did call that, he always had the threat of switching the Roaring Moon into Annihilate and beating himself up. And it's just like, that pressure made it feel really hard. And that on top of the fact that, like, he was getting reads right on me. Like, he was getting plays. Like, it's like, I could probably win this if I was getting every play right, but I wasn't. And it's just like, that felt like a very hard and real threat. And it's just like, kind of like well executed and annoying to deal with. I think that like because it was beat up taunt too, like that made it like particularly hard because I could reliably get Tailwind up onto it, which was like a big part of my game plan with like this Ash Pelipper. Mm-hmm. But besides that, everyone else like, oh, easy, yeah.
Yeah, you had a crazy run. I mean, yeah, like you said, you lost to Thomas, and then you won out in day 2, and you were locked into top cut. You played Raghav, and Raghav's of course a good friend of ours. So, yeah, I imagine you didn't really you gave him the win there, and then you played Thomas. I remember we were looking at this and we were like, okay, if 2 of you, Alex, and Colin win, then all 3 of you top cut. Otherwise, one of Alex and Colin will miscut, and you and Alex both lost sadly. So we didn't get 4 toppers in top cut, but yeah. Unfortunate they
No,
had
we
to
did.
face.
We got 4. We would have gotten 5.
Sorry, we would have gotten 5. Yes, yeah.
We would have had the majority.
Yeah, that would have been insane. I mean, it was already insane. Um,
Hmm.
but but yeah, were there any other like matchups in Swiss that you wanted to talk about?
I mean, Colin and Aurelian were like kind of similar with the Mousehold standard stuff, where like I felt like into that kind of stuff, I just had to play very aggressively with Palafin, and like I kind of played super crackhead and degenerate into it, and it's like I kind of felt like that's just what I had to do. Like I was going for baby Palafin stuff. I was going for plays where I could just totally just lose on the spot if I was wrong, and just like trying to get the rewrite. Because I feel like I have a general principle that what you're supposed to do in a bad matchup is play super aggressively. And like you should be dialing back and forth like how much you're going for reads based off of how good the matchup is. And there's like in any matchup there's probably like some optimal percentage that you're willing to risk. Um, and like because I in these matchups I was like, ooh, that Dragonite's kind of hard with the mouse hold and it's killing me, and also I'm like can't get defensive off. Then it's like I'm clicking buttons. I'm just hoping they're the right ones.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, but against like Alberto, I was not going for risks
Right.
because I felt like that matchup was very in my favor, and like yeah, like I feel like Alberto's outs was like get very very lucky with paralysis.
Mm-hmm.
And then Set versus Chuppa was interesting because he was the only Dondozo player to not bring the Dondozo against me.
That's
Like Chup,
yeah, that makes sense,
like
right?
Chuppa, yeah, no, because like respected like how crazy good the haze was, and I don't think it would have worked into me, but like it like kind of caught me off guard, and then he was able to win game 1, and that's when like I was going with game 2 and 3. I was going with the Palafin Pelipper stuff, which again aggressive mode, putting a lot of pressure on. But I was able to play it a bit more conservatively because even though I was putting on a lot of pressure, right? Like I was threatening a whole bunch of aggressive buttons. I was also like, I can tone this back a bit because I think that that's favored. At the end of the day, he's still bringing double fire into double water. Like the type chart doesn't get flipped that hard from when you're like in kindergarten and like playing your friends.
Mm-hmm. What was it like playing Choppa in top 8? You know, one of your best friends.
I was so annoyed that like that was like all the people that I got to get paired into because like I don't know. Like I was actually planning on like rooming with Chupa for OCIC before it came through. He like stayed at my place before like going like over to Australia. It's just like, oh okay, like one of us is getting a trophy, okay. But we realized it was optimal because if Chupa beat me, he would have gotten $500. Because I beat Chupa, that got me $3,000.
Yeah, yeah. You guys both got the travel awards, right? So you're both going out to London.
Yeah, exactly. What's crazy is that for the NA top 4 players, me, Chuppa, Raghav, and Alberto, literally at one point after San Diego, we all hung out together and got dinner and played the same Jackbox game. So it's like out of a room of 6 people, like 4 of them were like the top 4 in NACP.
Hmm. I
So it's
mean,
like,
we were joking about how finals and most of top 4 was just Los Angeles local. So yeah, I mean it was just super impressive to see 3 of you guys from SoCal all managed to make it top 4 at
you're saying SoCal. I live 2 miles from each of them.
yeah. That's
Like
insane.
like people walked more to get from their hotel to the venue that I live away from them. But yeah, no, it's really cool. I was like very happy with this performance. I think that like I called my shot pretty early on of like I wanted to bring something to the tournament that like people weren't really expecting, and like people weren't prepared for Pelipper Rain. Like it was not a team that existed. It was not a team that people were gauntleting against like ahead of time. And it's like I was kind of able to take advantage of people not quite knowing what they were doing, but me really knowing what they were doing. what I was doing. And it's like I had an okay like matchup in the tournament. I was really good into all the dozos. I was kind of mid into all the mouse holds, but like the people who had the good matchups didn't know how to leverage it as effectively against me as I would have against myself. And so I think that gave me a big edge.
Yeah. Uh, that's and I mean you also like kind of hit your matchups in top cut, which is really nice.
Yeah.
I know we were
I
watching and we were like, oh my god, I really hope Hari does not win his top 8 set because then you'd have to play him in top 4.
My ass would have gotten triple eliminated. I was just gonna try to hard call the mouse hold for Moon lead and just like figure it out. Like I was like, oh, it's so hard. But yeah, I thought my matchup spread in Top Cut was okay. I felt like I had like very winning matchups into I would say 4 out of 7 of cut. The rest of it,
Mm.
and then I wasn't quite sure about my matchup into Alfredo, if I'm being honest with you. Um, actually, like I said, like I have winning matchups into 3 of cut. I had okay matchups into Colin and Alfredo, and I had pretty losing matchups against Hari and Raghav. I thought,
Mm-hmm.
which like isn't like amazing, right? Like, but like I hit the 3 good matchups, and like I had 2 okay ones, so it's like I had a pretty good chance of like cutting the tour, of like winning the tour, like once I cut. I think.
Yeah, and like you said, you knew the you like. I feel like you could have beaten Alfredo just because you knew the matchup better than he did, probably. Um, Stuff like that. So
Yeah, no,
yeah,
like
I
I
mean,
beat Colin in Swiss too, so it's like
hmm yeah. So I mean, just a really really impressive run. Did you want to talk about the final set at all? I know it was you said it was kind of straightforward.
yeah. For the final set, I had a lot of practice against Alberto's team from Alberto, so I knew going in that like against in practice, I was bringing the same 4 every time, and he was really struggling with it, which was Palafin, Pelipper, Amungus, and Baxcalibur in some order. But I was looking at the team and I was like, Iron Hands is really good here, and also I didn't bring it in practice, so I don't think he's gonna like respect it super hard. So I thought that he was going to just like be trying to shut down the Amogus, which I was right about as he led Klefki Corviknight. And it's just like by changing my approach slightly, I was able to get a big advantage. I think that Alberto did what he was supposed to, which was try to hard call what I was doing and really call me out on it. But like I was able, like I just was like I'm just going to do something different, try to be unpredictable, and like if I give Alberto a chance to hard call me every game, then like yeah, he can totally win. Like no matchup's that bad. So I was just able to like create space. I did a bit of line like flow charting against some leads I thought was hard. I actually did have an aggressive play cooked in if he led Klefki Roaring Moon. My plan was to just close combat the Roaring Moon, just because I thought it was difficult for him to both Terra and for him to protect. So it's like close. So it's like if I assume that, then close combat is like pretty, like actually kind of safe into a lot of it.
Mm-hmm.
Um, but again, like I was just planning on like trying to exert max pressure and make it very difficult to like punish what I was doing. I figured that like if I tried to play this in like a straightforward like oh I have this mathematically locked way, Alberto was gonna like exploit that and like beat me. So I was just trying to like play it like a good matchup but not an auto win.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I mean that final set, of course, was streamed, as were many of your sets. So you go watch. I think that I mean, I think that he had a little. He did get some of the reads right. Like he actually like was in contention. I think game 2 was somewhat close,
Mm-hmm.
but yeah, I mean, like you said, the matchup was really solid, and you again you knew exactly what you had to do, and it was really impressive to watch. Basically, your entire tournament run. I mean, it was really incredible. Outside of it sounds like your matches against Hari, it sounds like you were just like in control, and it is insane that you basically lost to one person the entire tournament at what is an international championship, one of the most dominant IC runs that we've had in a long time. So huge congratulations. Of course, now with this new intel, if you want to try out the team, the rental code is on screen right now, and the paste will be in the description down below. Gavin, did you have any final words or shout outs that you wanted to give.
Yeah, I just wanted to give a shout out to Elisa for all of the support, both in like the building process and in Australia. And I want to give a shout out to Angel, like help her flock, let's fly.
Yeah, Polyper Flock, let's fly. Um, yeah. Again, congratulations once again. And thank you all for watching. And until next time, I'll see you all later.